Good morning, everyone. My name is Beth Brady, and as many of you know, I've been filling in for Claudia Edelman and this week and last week as she is taking care of her mom who has been diagnosed with COVID-19. So our prayers go out to Claudia, her mom, the entire family. I am a CMO with Chief Outsiders, which is a fractional chief marketing officer organization designed to help companies, small, medium-sized companies, navigate their strategic issues. I'm also a strategic advisor and chairman of the advisory board for We Are All Human. And I'm really happy to be here and filling in for Claudia on these webinars. These have been really helpful, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback from people that have attended. Today we have with us another distinguished guest, Peter Georgescu, who is Chairman Emeritus of Y&R, a global advertising, marketing, communications agency. He is also an author and a thought leader, and the topic of equality in America, or inequality in America, is what he does quite a bit of writing on, and he's joining us today to really talk about that topic as it pertains to COVID. So Peter, welcome. Welcome to.
Thank you. Glad to be with you. Glad to be with all of you on Zoom this morning, and I hope you are all well and your families are safe and doing just fine. And I wish more of that in the days and months ahead.
Yes, we all wish more of that. So Peter, I'm going to jump right in here and get us going on this topic. So, you know, the COVID-19 is a crisis, and, you know, crises happen in the world, and, you know, and there's always a lot of fallout to them, you know, particularly weather crises and things like that. But this one is been unique. This pandemic, which has affected the world, right? So it's not localized. And it's affecting everyone. It does not, you know, the health issues can hit anybody. But the economic issues of this pandemic are really preying on the minority, right? They're preying on certain people. And this is what you write about. I went to your website and I read some of the things you've written, and it's almost eerie how you kind of predicted what we're starting to really see unfold here, which is that those most vulnerable are not, they're getting hit in a much harder way than everybody else. So please talk to us a little bit about what is going on here.
Well, thank you so much. And again, I'm delighted to be with you all. And I think it's important for us to understand what happened, not from a viral point of view, that's for somebody else to talk about, but it is here. This powerful enemy is here, and it's totally indiscriminate. This enemy doesn't care whether you are a conservative, a liberal, a Republican, a Democrat, an American, or what your citizenship is. Don't care a bit. Any human is fair game here. And so that's just the reality of the powerful force that we encounter. However, it is discriminating. In fact, the effects of this virus impacts quite differently different people. And in fact, those underprivileged, those undereducated, those who don't have the access or haven't had the access to medical care and developed all kinds of underlying conditions, those who are less educated and don't understand the importance of nutrition and taking care of yourself, and the elderly, importantly, who have found themselves in this condition, are suffering to a much greater degree. And that's the tragedy. The tragedy is that it's almost as if COVID has taken the clothes off everybody, and it shows all the ugly sides of our society. And so it's important for us to sort of understand, how did we get here? Mm-hmm. Why did we have this, and how serious is this problem? The inequality and the dysfunctionality part of society. And obviously I know most about America, although it's a the crisis is importantly a developed world crisis of the inequality is that. And it is being created in an interesting way. The net result of inequality is not like, there are parts of America, north or south or east, west. That's not it. The inequality and dysfunctionality has resulted in a series of zip codes. So right within 3 miles of any person who's doing well today, there's another zip code, many more zip codes, in fact, where this unequal America, the other America, the zip code America finds itself. And there we find, what is the problem? Well, the problem is enormous lack of education. For example, there's no early education in these zip codes. None exist. And the quality of the secondary schools, the high schools, is really unfortunate. It's really bad. And you find yourself in relatively dilapidated schools. The plant is dilapidated. The classrooms are crowded, 30, 35 kids, with a teacher who's overwhelmed and who's not paid very well. So you don't get the best of the best teaching in these areas, with few exceptions, like organizations like Teach for America, which are volunteers of some of the finest, best universities in the country. And there are a lot of them, like 300,000 to 400,000 of them by now, after over 30 years. But on balance, the teachers are not well paid. They're not the best of the best. They're just trying to cope with a very difficult situation. The kid come to school every day, undernourished, unprepared, from difficult, stressful home situations, loaded with cortisol, this hormone that throws you into just survival mode when it's difficult to concentrate. And so a lot of people encountered problems in classrooms and so forth. So I'm just giving you some examples of that.
Yes.
And some, at home, the majority of the homes are led by a single mom. She has 1 or 2 jobs. And you worry about, where do these kids have the support system that they need? When is the dinner conversation where you say, hey, honey, how was the day in school? How'd you deal with a bully in the schoolyard that was giving you trouble, or a teacher who you didn't get along with, and so forth? And you talk about the importance of hard work and the merits of ethics and morality, and how to be a good citizen and so forth. How's that conversation go in those homes? Well, it doesn't go at all, because it never happens. Mom is busy at work, and the kids come and eat, and if there's something in the refrigerator, or they go out and get themselves, a very unhealthy meal. And then, of course, you have the usual. You have alcohol and drugs and gangs and all kinds of bad stuff going on, and high level of inequality for high school graduates. It's hard to find a job. For non-high school graduates, it's even worse. Few go to college, and then they have a tough time there because they're ill prepared by these schools that are not all that great, and nor are they prepared socially to cope with the pressures that exist in college. So there's the reality of that. We have an underprivileged social part of this country that are really suffering. And because of that, today they are the victims of this society. So what happened here? How did we get to have this disparate inequality? And I've spent most of my last, let's say, I've been at this for about 6 years, writing about it. I wrote a book called Capitalists Arise, and I said to my fellow capitalists, wake up. Sooner or later, we're going to have a problem here. And we need to change. First of all, we need to face the reality what is. And it wasn't easy to do that. People didn't want to hear it. They were denying, no, we don't have that kind of problems. That doesn't exist. You're exaggerating with that. Well, COVID made all the counter arguments go away because it's too obvious for everybody today. So that's why we are suffering, because business, in essence, has failed society to a large degree. And I want to talk about capitalism for a while. for just a minute or two, Beth, if I may. Because if we go back for almost close to 80, 90 years now, capitalism has proven to be the most powerful force for creating prosperity and growth that humankind ever invented. And it did that for a long period of time, from right after the Second World War to about the mid-80s. We saw a period in America that was unprecedented in terms of growth and development and business growth and so forth. And it was also the creation of the largest economic market in the world, which was America's middle class. Why? Because as businesses grew, as productivity increased, so did wages. So they went hand in hand. If you look at a graph between 1945 and about 1982, you will see two lines, except you can't tell them apart. As productivity went up, so did the wages. Everybody, by and large, won. There was this still discrimination on a race basis that existed, but the white community in general, the so-called poor, largely disappeared, and workers benefited immensely. And they became this powerful middle class. And then in mid-1980s, things began to change dramatically. And now this powerful force of capitalism got hijacked. It got hijacked by the financial communities that really said, why do we need to pay people so well? Can we pay them less? Because after all, on a profit and loss statement, labor was the highest cost. So let's squeeze that cost. And why do we invest so much money in research and development and basic research? Let's do less of that and take that money and put it into our profits so we can drive the stock market up. And they did that. And they invented other things. They paid enormous dividends. They went through this device of buying back their stocks, which basically the net effect is to really drive the stock market. That was the intent of it. And it did beautifully. So capitalism worked. But it was the kind of capitalism that was asked to produce results for us 20% or 25% of the people who owned a lot of stock. And that's basically who owns the stock. 84% of the value of the stock is in America is in the hands of 10% of the people. So that's how we created this inequality, you see. And now this is obvious to everybody. And so the current situation is not sustainable. We have to change. So unfortunately, until we change dramatically, this vulnerable people, the immigrants, and I'm one of them. I came to this country when I was 15 years old. I didn't speak a word of English, and I hadn't gone to school for 4 years. But I got lucky. That's another story. But I got a very good education, and that good education enabled me to become successful in this nation. So I live the American dream. I can look in the mirror and say to myself, Peter, I know you are the best you can be. And this country enabled me to do that. And the secret was a good education. And so as we begin to look at the future, we have to change both from a business and from a government and societal point of view. We have to look back now and say, what's happened? It's wrong. And we have to let go of the past, but keep those things like capitalism. Capitalism was successful. We just asked capitalism to do the wrong thing. We asked it to maximize the short-term value, which meant every quarter business had to produce more. And to do that, that's when wages went down, investment in businesses went down, basic research went down. And that's why you see now China growing like crazy because they're investing more in their people, they're investing more in businesses, they're investing more in research. If you look at, for example, 5G today, every major technological invention in the last 50 years or so or more was created by America. No more. 5G is now brought up, it's China.
Right.
Correct. They've done it, and now the best what we can do now is to say, please, the world, don't buy this wonderful invention. That's our defense. It's crazy. And their investment in new technology like artificial intelligence is dramatically high. So anyway, that's where we are today.
So there's obviously this has not been, like some people like to think about COVID having hit, and all of a sudden the problems are because of COVID. But you're exactly right. I mean, this has been building towards this. COVID just helped it like explode much faster maybe than it would have otherwise.
Right.
So as we think about where we sit, and it is, grim when you look at a lot of the statistics and the numbers that are coming out of those people that are most impacted, and they're getting sick at a higher rate, and they're dying at a higher rate, and they're losing their jobs, and they're economically in dire situation at a higher rate. So we have to start thinking about, well, what are the things that need to change? And you've talked a little bit about that. Education, for sure, our education system needs to change. But what do you think corporate America, this machine that has been maybe taking advantage of the human capital for a while here, what happens to change there?
Well, I think, as you just said, and I've intimated, is that business has been culpable to help create this disparity. And business can, and in fact, business must become the leading force in fixing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we must do. So what does that really entail? Well, as I said, let's take advantage of capitalism. Socialism has basically been a total disaster around the world. I grew up in a socialist/communist country in Romania, and it was an unmitigated disaster, emotionally, in terms of the livelihood of most people and so forth. So socialism in that sense doesn't work. A supportive capitalism does. And the problem is that we didn't have this driving force of capitalism that was inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
So now, interestingly, there are businesses that have recognized that. And if you look at some of the businesses in America, they know, people knew instinctively that if you treat your people differently, not as a cost, most business in general were looking at the workers, their employees, as a cost. Mm-hmm. So what do you do to a cost? You squeeze it, right?
Right.
So no, the people who really are the most successful also are the most fair and more just companies. And they know that if you treat people well, good things begin to happen. In fact, if you look at the 21st century, people are going to be the single most important asset that a corporation has, because for two reasons. They, in fact, are the only ones who can drive productivity increases and who can create the kind of innovations and changes that the customer wants. Only the employees do that. The CEO and the C-suite doesn't do that. They do other things, mm-hmm. but they don't sit and create different products, different initiatives, who know how to treat the customer better and so forth. So the reality for business is you'll be more profitable if you take care of your people. And that means respecting people, respecting the dignity of people and their families, rewarding people, paying people more. Mm-hmm. And how do you pay people where that makes sense? It's not just giving people money. That's not sustainable. You can do that once, but that doesn't work because you can't keep doing it again and again. So at the same time, you have to do different things. And what do? You pay people by the incremental value of what they produce. Again, you pay people, if they create value, they need to share in that value. That's the fair thing to do. Well, for the last 40 years, they didn't do that.
Right.
It used to be called profit sharing, and profit share can be paid in cash, it can be paid in stock, whatever the best thing is for people and for the company. But they must share in that incremental value. So the workers, the employees, are one of the critical stakeholders. Stakeholders, right? Not shareholders, but the stakeholder.
Right.
And so is the customer as a stakeholder. And the corporation itself is a stakeholder because you have to invest in the corporation for the long term. And the environment, the next pandemic is right around the corner. It's called climate change. And we have to anticipate and recognize that it is coming and it can have the same powerful effects that COVID did. So we have to now begin to look at issues like that and say we need to prepare ourselves for that coming. So stakeholder capitalism, to me, is the right answer for the post-COVID era. And that has to come. And so I'm now beginning to spend the majority of my time talking to business leaders and say, look guys, it's time for us to embrace this and make it real. So we have to go through all the process of saying, so what's the operating model for this new version of capitalism? We have to be specific, we have to be clear so that most CEOs and most boards of directors accept it. And the, let's say, equity guys who buy the shares of these companies, the financial communities, they have to buy this thing as well. So that's the job that I'm involved with right now with business leaders in America, with CEO leaders, and wanting to make sure that this new version of capitalism, this stakeholder capitalism begins to take hold and becomes the new operating model in America and in the rest of the world. And that has to be the way that society then begins to have more money in their pockets for families, so they can take better care of their families. We also have to work with governments to recognize that we have to change the education system to be able to produce better educated workforce so that we can compete more effectively with whomever else in the world, so that the quality of now my grandchildren or your children, whatever your age is, or yourself, Marisa, you, and the children of so many people around the world, they deserve to have a better life. And that only comes with a better education, better, stronger family units, and for business to help create and develop the possibility for that to take hold. So that's part of what I hope to be a brighter future for the generations ahead of us.
That's wonderful. And we could talk about this all day long. And unfortunately, we're about running out of time here. I really appreciate your comments. I agree with you 100%. I myself do turnaround work. That's what I've built my career on. And I can tell you that one thing I've learned is that when you turn around a business, when you transform anything, it doesn't happen without people. And that is by far the number one resource. And so your point is taken. And companies that survive the best are those that are not just human, but are humane. And so hopefully this message that we've talked today will help some others think about, what do they need to do? Everybody plays a part in this. What do they need to do to help navigate these rough waters we're in? So Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. Everyone out there, I encourage you to pick up his book, Capitalists Arrive, which is really a great book that can help us think through how we need to move forward. And Peter, I look forward to seeing more of what you are writing about. It's really, really smart and helpful information. To everyone else, have a great day. All continue to put Claudia and her mother in your prayers, and we will see you again here tomorrow. All right, thank you, everyone.
Everybody be well. Everybody be well.
well.
Thank you. All the best.